Thanks for that introduction. Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be looking at the coins that were produced during the reign of Mary Queen of Scots. And rather than cover the entirety of Mary's coinage or provide a play-by-play recount of her reign, I want to show a select few coins and explain how they can be used as tools to illustrate the various events and changing circumstances that took place throughout her reign. So I'm going to start with a brief introduction to coinage during Mary's era, and then I'll move on to looking at some of Mary's coins themselves, and then I'm going to finish up by looking at some useful online resources. So I just want to go into a wee bit of background on Scottish coinage of the 16th century. So the Kingdom of Scotland had its own coinage and distinct currency, known as the pound Scots, from about 1136 to 1707. This was replaced by the pound sterling as part of the 1707 political union with England, and that's a currency that we still use today. So the pound Scots was a pre-decimal currency, and it was divided into two subunits, being the shilling and the penny. So there were 20 shillings in a pound and 12 pence in a shilling, for a total of 240 pence in the pound. Now, it's almost impossible to provide an accurate indication of the modern value of the pound Scots during Mary's reign, but I'm hoping that some of the stuff up on the screen here should hopefully help put it into perspective. So in the late 1560s, a skilled craftsman such as, say, a stonemason would have earned about maybe 18 shillings a week, and an unskilled craftsman would have earned about 5 shillings a week. And also there's a few 16th century prices up here. So in 1546 in Edinburgh, a pint of ale would have cost you 4 pence. And we know from an Act of Parliament from 1551 that set the prices for various birds, that a chicken would have cost you 4 pence, and a swan on the higher end of things would have cost you 5 shillings. So to put that in perspective, for the price of one swan, you could have bought 15 chickens. So Scottish coin production during Mary's reign was done using the hammered method. So coin blanks would be placed between two coin dies bearing the design of the coin. The top die would then be struck with a hammer, and this would impart the design onto both sides of the coin blank. So if we look at the bottom photo here, this is a pair of, so it's a resin cast of a pair of English medieval coining dies, but the same method would have been used in Scotland during Mary's reign. So the large one at the bottom with the spike on the end, that would have been placed on something like a block of wood to hold it steady. And the coin blank would then be placed on top of this larger die, and a smaller die on the right would have been placed on top of that and hit with a hammer, and this would impart the design onto both sides. And you can actually see, if you look at the smaller die on the right, you can sort of see how the edge flares out. So that's been caused by the force of thousands and thousands of hammer strikes over time. And then if you look at the top photo, you can see the smaller of the two dies from a different angle, and you can see how, and it's been placed next to an original English coin of the period, and you can see just how the design from that die is imparted directly onto the coin. So numismatics is the study of coins, tokens, and medals, but today we're only going to be looking at coins. So this coin that's up on the screen is a ducat of Mary Queen of Scots' father, King James V. And I want to use it just to highlight some numismatic terminology. So the two sides of a coin are called the obverse and the reverse. So the obverse, which is the side on the left here, is the side of the coin that has the monarch's name and title, or their depiction, or both. So unlike our modern coins today, Scottish coins of Mary's period don't necessarily always depict her, but in this case, it's the side that has her name and her titles on it that would be termed the obverse. So what we can see on this example of this coin of James V, that it depicts him wearing a nice hat, and it also gives his title of James V by the grace of God, King of Scots. And the reverse is just the other side of the coin, which is this photo here on the right. So the inscriptions on a coin are referred to as the legend, and like our current coins, are in Latin. So throughout this presentation, I've transcribed the legends in the original Latin, and I've also provided an English translation throughout. Now, depending on the size of the coin, the legends can sometimes be abbreviated. So for this example here, I've placed the abbreviated letters on the obverse legend within brackets, but I won't be doing it throughout throughout the presentation. I'm just doing it to show like how the legends can sometimes be cut down. So if we look at the obverse here, we can see that the word rex, which is Latin for king, has been abbreviated down to just a single R. So as I said before, the obverse legend has the monarch's name and titles, and the reverse legend, which on this coin is the king's power, loveth judgment, usually has either the location where the coin was struck, such as in Edinburgh, or a verse from the Bible. Doesn't necessarily always have to be from the Bible, but usually coins of this period, they usually have some sort of religious message from the Bible. And also during this time, coins are struck with an intrinsic metallurgical value. So this ducat here is worth £2 Scots, and it would have had a gold content that was worth slightly less than £2 Scots at the time. And the face value is usually slightly higher than the intrinsic value, because that would provide the mint and the king with a profit when they made coins. And also at this time, coins are not just currency, they also serve as a symbol of power, legitimacy and authority, and they're also used as mediums of propaganda. And also the right of the monarch to strike coins is jealously protected, and crimes against coinage such as counterfeiting are actually considered to be treason and are punished incredibly harshly. So moving on to Mary's coins, the coins of Mary's reign are catalogued into 5 different periods, which are based upon her marital status. So the first period covers her accession, from her accession to the throne up until her marriage to Francis of France. The second period covers her marriage to Francis. The third covers her first widowhood. The fourth covers her marriage to Henry Lord Darnley. And the fifth covers her second widowhood. Now, James V, whose ducat we've just seen, died when Mary was just 6 or 7 days old. So for much of her reign, Scotland was actually ruled on her behalf by two individuals, and these two people were James Hamilton, Earl of Arran, who served as governor of the realm from 1543 to 1554. And this position of governor effectively gave him the powers of a near king to rule on Mary's behalf. And the other was Mary of Guise, who was Mary Queen of Scots' mother. She served as Queen Regent after Arran formally resigned the governorship in 1554, and she ruled on behalf of her daughter up until 1560. Now, the coins issued during the regencies of Arran and Guise bore symbols of their authority, and these symbols took the form of some of their heraldic family emblems. So for the Earl of Arran, the symbol that we often see on coins structuring his tenure is the cinquefoil or the cinquefoil, which is like to me it looks like a 5-pointed star or a 5-pointed spur or flower-like shape, and it's there on the left. And during the regency of Guise, her authority is represented by the Cross of Jerusalem, which is this cross here, big large cross with 4 smaller crosses surrounding it, and the Cross of Lorraine, which is just a double-barred cross. So as I said, coins struck during Arran's regency feature the cinquefoil. So if we look at this coin on the left, this is the gold 20 shillings, which was struck during the first year of Mary's reign. So this coin, the obverse legend, names Mary as Queen of Scots. But if we look at the reverse, beneath the crowned MR monogram, which stands for Maria Regina, which is Latin for Queen Mary, we see the 5-pointed cinquefoil beneath it. So again, symbol of Arran. And Arran's iconography also appears on other coins, such as this penny on the right, struck in 1547. So if we look at the reverse, we'll see there's a cross, and in 2 of the quarters of that cross, there's the cinquefoil, and the other 2 quarters are taken up by crowns. And it's also just worth noting that this coin here on the right, this penny, is actually the earliest of Mary's coins that depict her. So this forward-facing bust we can see here, she depicts Mary when she was 4 years old. In response to the Scottish Parliament nullifying the treaties of Greenwich, Henry VIII ordered an amphibious attack on Edinburgh and the surrounding area in May of 1544. And at this time, Mary of Guise and her daughter, Mary Queen of Scots, were safely based at Stirling Castle. Now, Regent Arran was unable, at least initially, to repel this assault. So Guise and her supporters took the opportunity to order Arran to resign the regency in her favour. Now, she was ultimately unsuccessful in seizing power, and she had reconciled with Regent Arran by early 1545. But during this period, Guise actually struck bobbies, which is a coin worth sixpence, at sterling, and they differ from the bobbies struck under the authority of Regent Arran. So if we look on the left, we can see a regular bobby struck under the authority of Arran, and on its reverse, it features a crown saltire with a cinquefoil on each side of it. But if we look at the one on the right, this is the bobby struck under the authority of Mary of Guise in 1544, and it features, in place of that saltire and cinquefoil, it features the Cross of Jerusalem, which is one of Guise's heraldic emblems. Now, what's interesting about this bobby on the right is Arran actually attempted to suppress them and remove them from circulation once he found out about them. And I think this highlights the importance that coins played at this time as symbols of authority and as mediums of propaganda, since Arran was effectively trying to remove the coins that promote his rival from circulation. So moving on to the end of the Arran Regency, we have these two gold 44 shilling coins, which were struck in the final year of Arran's Regency. And so these are both the same denomination, both struck in the same year. But if we look at them both, we find that they feature a J and a G on them, or an I. Looks like an I to us, an I and a G. And this stands for Jacobus Governator, or Governor James, referring to Regent Arran. So if we look at the coin on the left first, this is the earliest of the 44 shillings to be struck. It features the IG on each side of the royal arms on the obverse, but also on it also flanks this sort of busy-looking monogram on the reverse. It supposedly spells out Maria Regina, which is Latin for Queen Mary, but it features the IG on both sides. Now, this coin on the left is incredibly rare today. There's only a few of them left in existence. And the reason for that is they were quickly replaced by the coin that we see on the right, which again is another 44 shillings, struck in the same year, only slightly later. But if we look at it, we'll see that the IG appears on the obverse next to the royal arms, but on the reverse next to Mary's monogram, it's been replaced with the cinquefoils. Now, we'll never really know for certain why this was done, but it has been posited that that the placing of Arran's initials alongside Mary's royal monogram was seen as a step too far. Arran was overreaching in his authority by placing his initials alongside the Queen's monogram, so it was quickly removed from the design was quickly replaced. Anyway, moving on to Guise. So in April of 1554, Arran formally resigned the governorship of Scotland and is replaced by Mary of Guise, who rose as Queen Regent from 1554 to her death in 1560. So this testoon, which is a coin worth 5 shillings upon the screen, was struck during the Guise Regency. And we can see that Arran's cinquefoils have been removed from the design. They don't appear on it. And they've been replaced with symbols of Queen Regent Guise. So if we look at the reverse of this coin, we can see that it features the Cross of Jerusalem as a central sort of design motive. So moving on, in 1548, Mary Queen of Scots is sent to France, and in return for promised French military aid, it is agreed that she would marry the heir to the French throne, Dauphin Francis. So the Dauphin is just a title traditionally bestowed upon the heir to the French throne. Now, Mary married Francis in April of 1558, making Mary the Dauphiness of France and Francis King Consort of Scotland, and the coinage was updated to reflect this change in status. So this gold ducat up on the screen was struck to celebrate the marriage of Francis and Mary. So if we look at it, we can see that it titles them both as King and Queen of Scotland, or it titles them both as King and Queen of Scotland, and Francis is titled as the Dauphin of Valois. And also both of them are depicted, so we can see Francis on the left here and Mary on the right, and there's a single crown above them, that being the crown of Scotland that they both hold. The reverse is quite worn in this example, but you can see that it's made up of a kind of this really elaborate cross design. It's composed of 4 pairs of interlinked crowned dolphins. And the dolphin was a symbol of the Dauphin, whose title literally translates to dolphin. But the Dauphin isn't just represented here. If we look between the dolphins, we can see the cross of Lorraine appears, and this was one of the symbols of Queen Regent Guise. Now, these new titles and symbolism extend to the silver coinage of this era. So if we look at this half testoon, we can see on the obverse that Francis and Mary are titled as King and Queen of Scotland and Dauphin and Dauphiness of France. And the royal arms on the obverse have also been changed. So if we look at the left portion, we can see the arms of Francis as Dauphin and King Consort of Scotland, and on the right we have Mary's arms as the rampant lion of Scotland, as she was Queen of Scots. And also the reverse legend of he has made both one refers to the marital union between the couple. But the symbols of Guise also continue to appear on the coinage, and we can see them on both sides of this coin. So if we look at the arms on the obverse, behind them they have this large cross. Now this cross is one of the component crosses of the Cross of Jerusalem, but it's not possible to depict the smaller crosses that form because they'd be obscured by the royal arms. And then if we move to the reverse, if we look at the crowned FM monogram, which stands for Francis and Mary, we can see that the cross of Lorraine appears on each side of that. So by 1560, the political situation in both France and Scotland had changed drastically. So Henry II of France had died July 1559, and his son Francis, as Francis II, succeeds him as King of France. Now, due to her marriage to Francis, Mary becomes Queen of France of this, and this again is reflected on the coinage. So if we look at the obverse legend, we can see that Francis and Mary are named as both King and Queen of France and Scotland. And the conjoined arms of both Scotland and France now appear on the coins. And also, if we look at the reverse, flanking the FN monogram are crowned thistles and fleur-de-lis, and these are national emblems of the two kingdoms. Now, in June of 1560, Queen Mary of Guise died, and as a result of this, her symbols have been removed from the coinage. So as you can see, the Cross of Jerusalem or the Cross of Lorraine, they don't appear on this coin anywhere. The death of Regent Guise paved the way for the Protestant lords of the congregation to take power, and in August of 1560, the Scottish Parliament passed legislation that made Scotland officially Protestant, and the influence of these events can also be seen on this coin. So if we look at the reverse legend, it reads, "The Lion of the tribe of Judah hath prevailed." Now, this has been interpreted as referring to the Protestant lords' victory over Catholicism. Now, Francis II died in December 1560, leaving Mary widowed for the first time. However, these coins that are up on the screen, they continued to be struck into 1561. So they do name Francis as King of Scotland and France, but he was dead, by that point. So moving on to the third period. So this testoon that's up on the screen, this is the first coin to be struck that reflects Mary's status after being widowed after the death of Francis II. And what's really interesting about it is that Mary wrote to the Frenchmen in February of 1561, so that's 6 months before she returned to Scotland in August, and she requested that they make the dies for her new coinage. And that's the coin we're looking at here. So this coin was actually designed by Antoine Brocher of the Paris Mint. So it wasn't designed in Scotland; it was designed in France, and the dies were then sent to Scotland to be used to strike coins. Now, I think it's quite notable that just months after the death of Francis II and a good 6 months prior to her return to Scotland, Mary was already redesigning her coinage in preparation for her return home. And I think this could arguably demonstrate that she understood the importance of using coinage to promote her image once she returned. So Marion Archibald, who was a prominent coin curator and scholar at the British Museum, she claimed that coins were the most significant form of mass media that were available to Mary Queen of Scots. And I think if we look at this coin here, we can really see Mary taking full advantage of that, this form of media to promote her image, after she returns home. So on the obverse, we've got a depiction of Mary herself, but the legend now refers to her solely as Mary Queen of Scots. But if we look at the reverse, we see the arms. The arms don't just show her as Queen of Scots; it's also her arms as Queen Dowager of France. So in July of 1565, Mary married Henry Stuart Lord Darnley and proclaimed him King of Scots. So this silver real upon the screen of 30 shillings was issued to celebrate their marriage. So the obverse is kind of interesting in that it depicts both Henry and Mary. So Henry's on the left and Mary's on the right. And the reverse legend of those whom God hath joined together, let no man put asunder, refers to the marital union. Now, this coin actually caused outrage when it was issued because it placed, if we look at the obverse legend, we can see that Henry's name appears before Mary's. And this implied that Henry was superior to Mary, and this caused a massive outrage, and the coin was quickly removed from circulation. And it was done so successfully that there now remain only 2 examples left in existence that we know of. So one of them is in the British Museum, which is this one up on the screen, and the other is in the National Museum of Scotland. And I haven't been in a few years, but I'm pretty sure the National Museum of Scotland one is on public display. So if you want to go see it, you can. So this coin here quickly removed from circulation and replaced with this one. So as you can see, Darnley and Mary's portraits have been removed from the coin, and Mary's name has been placed in front of Henry's in the legend. And the reverse design shows this quite strange motif of a tortoise climbing up a crowned palm tree. Now, several possible interpretations have been put forward for this enigmatic design, but one of the most popular ones has led to this coin being referred to as the Crookston dollar. So it was claimed that this coin depicted the yew tree at Crookston Castle, under which Mary and Darnley first courted. Now, this story is an 18th century fabrication. Plus, if you look at the coin, you can clearly see it's a palm tree, not a yew tree. But a recent suggestion I quite like is that the crown palm tree itself represents the Stuart dynasty. And Mary, what's worth noting is Mary was pregnant when these coins were authorized in December of 1565. So it's been suggested that the tortoise symbolizes Mary's pregnancy and her future child. And the tortoise is climbing up the tree towards the crown because it was hoped that Mary's future child would one day ascend to the throne. So I suppose overall you could argue that the palm tree motif, it ultimately symbolizes the strength and continuation of the Stuart dynasty as a future generation is on the way. So Henry Darnley was murdered in early 1567, and Mary is widowed for the second time. So the coins have to be updated to reflect this. So if we look at this one, we can see the design is exactly the same as the last one struck when Darnley was king, but his name and title have been removed from the obverse. Now it's just Mary ruling solely as Queen of Scots. So in July of 1567, Mary Queen of Scots was forced to abdicate in favour of her son, King James VI. And after failing to regain her throne, ultimately culminating in losing the Battle of Langside in May of 1568, Mary flees to England and she never returned back to Scotland. Now, this coin that's up on the screen is it's a real of James VI. It's the earliest coin struck in his name after his mother's abdication. And the reverse design is very interesting. So the sword and the legend of "for me but against me if I deserve" refers to an event in which, a supposed event in which the Roman Emperor Trajan, when presenting the sword to the prefect of the Praetorian Guard, after he assumed the emperorship, he commanded the guard to either use it for or against him, dependent upon his actions. So the message of this coin is that it's just to remove a tyrannous monarch, more or less, which clearly seems to be justifying the removal of Mary earlier in 1567. Because it's claiming that people have the right to remove an unjust monarch. That's me done looking at the coins. I want to look at just a few useful online resources. So I've stuck them up on the screen and they're in the chat, and I'm just going to go through them individually. So the first of these resources is an online website called Numista. It's a free online user-made coin catalog, and its coverage of Mary's coinage is almost complete. Only a few coins are missing, and the entries are accurate. So it's a very, very useful resource for finding information on Mary's coins. So I just want to show you where you can find how you can get them. So this is the homepage of the site. So if we go to coins here on the top left, and then search for Scotland. Select Scotland, here's all the Scottish coins in the catalogue, and go to add filters up on the left here. And then under ruling authority, select Mary the First. And there we have all the Mary Queen of Scots coins in the catalogue. So as you can see, for each entry, there's a description of the coin, what it's made of, its weight, its face value, when it was struck, lots of really useful information, but it also includes a legend and a translation of that legend, and also how it would be, catalogued. So this information can then be used to help source photos from museum collections that you could use in a classroom setting. So the three museums that I've drawn photos from in this presentation are the Hunterian at the University of Glasgow, the Ashmolean Museum at the University of Oxford, and the British Museum. So let's just start. I'll just show you how you can find Mary's coins on each of these sites. So we'll start with the Hunterian. So they have a search or collections page. So just click on search or collections there. Go to department, select Hunterian, go to collection, select numismatics, and then for person, Mary Queen of Scots. And there you go. There's about 130 odd coins and medals of Mary that you can. I mean, the images are free to use in an educational setting. You can make use of them. Second one is the Herbiden coin room at the Ashmolean. So the Ashmolean has a great collection of Scottish coins, and it probably has one of the world's best collection of gold Scottish coins. So it's an amazing resource. So to find Mary from the Herbiden coin room page, just go to person in this advanced search function and find Mary Queen of Scots and search. And there we go. A whole bunch of Mary coins, mostly gold ones, but you can get the silver stuff from other sources. And the final one is the British Museum's searcher collection as a page. So to start, just type in something random. It doesn't really matter. It's just I want to open up this this advanced search function. So go to object name down here, find coin. Here we go. And then for person/organization, look for Mary Queen of Scots. And make sure to remove the first thing you search for from this top bar, because it can mess up the search. So once we get rid of that, we can see there's about 200 odd coin images that you can draw from. So as Karen mentioned earlier, there's an exhibit opening up at the Hunterian in October. It will include a few coins of Mary Queen of Scots, but also a lot of other objects related to her life and her afterlife. And if you do want to arrange, a classroom tour or something of it, feel free to get in contact with Stephen Reed, and he'll be able to organise that. And also, on the off chance you want to get a hold of me, that's my email up there on the screen if you want to go for Mary's coins or anything to do with coins, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's me done.